So kind of touching on that, and then moving on to the second topic is a deep dive into fighters, the the punchy axe wielding, heavy armor wearing, beat face kind of close
Typical
combat
murder
guys.
hobo.
Typical murder hobos, the fighter class. Um, Kind of round robin. Have you guys played a fighter, and if so, what made you want to play the fighter in the first place? Like, what's the highlight reel of you may be a fighter if Bryce? What's up?
Well, my last character was a fighter that I played, the Eladrin, and I've almost always exclusively played dex-based fighters as opposed to strength-based ones because I like the basically the option to stealth if you need to. And if you are wearing that clunky plate mail and your dexterity is like a 10, it's just not happening because you can get your AC pretty high up there if you have a maxed out dex. And I mean, so if you're wearing light armor, you got the studded leather, which is 12 plus your AC. So if you have a max modifier, you're looking at 17, which is respectable. And then if you are, depending on the type of fighter you take, you can even add more. You could use a shield to add to get it up to 19. So you can still tank and be a dex fighter.
Well,
I think it's a better option.
that that touches on a lot of like let's step it back one step. Like, why did you even pick a fighter in the first place? Like, instead of like you said you wanted Dex for stealth, but what about a fighter made you pick that instead of Barbarian, which would put Dex into AC as well as Constitution? Like, why a fighter?
I suppose for me, it was just I was looking through the rule book and I was like, you know what? I haven't played a fighter in a really long time. I think they get overlooked a lot because they are considered the simplest and the most boring, but they don't have to be. They don't have to be boring. Um, I just don't know if there's any real reason to just pick a fighter over any other class because every other class can do what a fighter does. You can even take a feat and get a chunk of the Battle Master's whole deal where they get those maneuvers that allow them to do extra special things. So you can just take a feat. You can be Variant Human Wizard with the Battle Master feat. And so I don't know if there's really any reason to ever play a fighter other than simplicity or you just want to.
Well, I mean, things that the fighter get, especially very early, that other classes don't have access to, is they're a great way of getting heavy armor and every weapon proficiency you could ever want. They're also great with action economy because,
They,
yeah, right off the bat,
they
you get
also
action
get
surge.
additional ASIs,
Yeah, they get
Mm-hmm.
second wins. They get,
Hey, what's
yeah,
an ASI?
ability stat increase. So when you level up and increase your dex, strength, wisdom, or whatever, they get 2 or 3 extra ones because they get one at fourth, sixth, eighth, 12th. Yeah, I think they get 2 or 3 extra ones. I don't have the
And there's
handbook
always
on
been
me.
the one to be able to get multiple attacks earlier than anyone else.
yeah. And with
Well,
the,
the
oh, sorry.
multiple attacks really usually come at the same level. If you start looking at like paladin and stuff like that, extra attack pretty much comes at level 5, level 6. So that's not really that much of a difference.
But I mean, Tim's right. I think they're one of the only ones that get the second additional attack, where maybe Paladin and
So
them.
the third attack,
Yeah,
got you. Yeah, they don't get a third one. A lot of the other classes only get a second
two.
one.
Yeah,
Fighters get a third one at it's like 14 or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I can look.
But how about you, Ryan, Jess? Have you? I don't think Jess has ever played a fighter that I know of. But Ryan, you play a lot of melee classes. What draws you to that?
I haven't. I think this character I'm playing now
is the first one that I've dipped into fighter with. Mostly I've been barbarian and rogue just because that's more my flavor. Smash something in the face, run, hide, jump out, smash them again.
It's kind of like hanging out at your house.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. There's a reason the bathroom has 2 doors. Got to get that surprise attack in there.
I thought it was for ventilation.
Well, that too.
Makes for a short bathroom trip.
Overall, I like the idea of the fighter, and like Bryce said, they get the extra ASIs, and like Brandon and Tim said, the extra attack's nice. There are ways around that with other classes, like the barbarians. I can't think of what it's called now. I think at level
Reckless
3.
attack.
Yep.
Rage?
Well, not the reckless. The reckless is just advantage.
Was it the rage?
Yeah, the rage, and their extra attack I think comes at level 3. And I like that.
Still level 5 extra attack.
Okay. But the biggest problem I run into is I'm kind of dead ending at role play possibilities with barbarians, just with the inherent lack of intelligence with the barbarian class. And I know you don't have to stick to the meta on role playing, but I find it helps a bit to kind of stick to the general meta. And
John 1 played very well into that. But like I said, that also gave us a really good role play option with Marina's character. And then Otog was kind of the deviant of that. He was a monk, so it was a martial class of sorts. But you were able to role play with it, and you were the main combat DPS person.
Yeah, that one was. I don't think that one was quite so different, but that campaign lent more to a straight up melee fighter versus the previous ones with John and Babs. Because those both, we needed a very tanky up front in their face, whereas the last campaign, I had the ability to be a very mobile monk fighter, and that helped there. So
that does bring up a good point, that the fighter has some versatility in what it can do from a stereotypical MMO class. You could go into the heavy armor. I'm gonna have an AC at 21. Come hit me. I'm standing in front of everybody. And you could go and say, well, I'm just going to take the shield off that guy, and I'm going to give him a 2-handed sword, and he's going to be a damage dealer, an upfront damage dealer. They even have some archery that you could spec into early on that'll let you go into Bryce's dex-based range builds, or a range damage dealer. So do you think that they are more forgiving than, say, a class where, like Wizard, for instance, where you're like, oh, I kind of want to punch things in the face, but I physically can't because at level 1, everything will kill me. Like,
well,
yeah.
My very first character was a fighter, and this was back in the 2nd edition. You roll 4d6, take out the lowest, and whatever stats you get, you start and work your way down. And that's back when I rolled an 18 for the first stat, which was strength. And then if you get an 18, you get an option of rolling a percentage dice. And that adds to your strength. And I ended up rolling 100, which was a 00. So basically, I had the top highest strength you could have in 2nd edition. So it ended up going to being a blacksmith's son. And of course, if that's going to happen, then I'm going to go with a 2-handed weapon. But, that was the first, sword and board kind of person. that I had played, but then I've worked a lot of different fighters in through the times.
I think that Bryce was saying that they're not as interesting a class, and Ryan was saying that barbarians felt sort of like a dead end roleplay wise. But I think that you can play with any class and make it something unique. It's also a pretty simple class to get the hang of, unlike casters. So I know a lot of newer players go to it. So it's probably a good idea to like delve into what makes it interesting as sort of a starting block, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That especially if you're starting into a game and you don't want to have 20 different options, and you want to be the person that goes in, kind of like when we were talking about the murder hobo. I go in and I attack. Now you don't have to role play it that way, but at least you understand. You don't have to worry about moving out of the way, or whether you're playing a grid or a theater of the mind type style. You could just say, I square up against it. I grapple it. I am the wall. I am the defense between everyone else in this thing, and that's a very good starting point for a lot of players. You don't have to worry about with rogues. Did I disengage? With wizards, what spells did I prepare? So it's a very fun starting class. Like I said, it was fortunate that the very first character I rolled ended up having a very high strength stat. So
Brag.
no, but it gave me an opportunity to start off with the basic character.
Yeah, they're very forgiving. And also we talked a little bit last episode about like power curves of different classes, and I definitely think fighters are front loaded on their power curve, where they get a lot of their cool abilities up front, levels 1 through 5. So do you think that picking a fighter over, say, a paladin who would get more cool things later would influence? Do you think looking at the game you're about to play would influence your choice? Because a lot of D&D games never get out of level 5. People spend months in levels 1 through 4, and then they get either bored or change games or change topics, change parties, or die. I mean, I'm guilty of that. My character dies all the time. And you start back and you push it up again. So a fighter not only is being resilient, but also getting a lot of your tricks early. Do you think that will bake into a lot of people picking this class?
Oh yeah, for sure. And if you open it up to Unearthed Arcana and supplementary books, there are a lot more options for the fighter. I think there are 5 fighter subclasses that I know of offhand, and I can name them. You have the Battle Master. You have whatever the base one in the book is called. I can't remember. The Cavalier, the Samurai, and something else. I want to say Arcane Archer.
You have Arcane Archer. You have an Arcane Spellcast. You have Spellblade. Or I think it's
Yeah,
called
yeah, the
Spellblade out of
Hexblade.
Hex. So
actually, there's 6 then.
I don't see
Champion's the simple one. That's right.
I don't see a lot of play other than Battlemaster out there.
Well, the Battle Master is for, at least for me, the most fun because it is the most flexible, but it is a little bit more intense than playing your regular fighter who is just your champion fighter who's just getting an enhanced critical, so critting on 19s instead of just 20s and stuff like that. And they do get more complicated, but they are still, in my opinion, one of the better classes for beginners because they are straightforward.
No,
Are they OP?
you're good, Marina. Sorry.
No, I don't think they're overpowered. Like Brandon said, they are front loaded though. You get a lot of your stuff right away. Like your second wind and action surge. And if you are going to play to a little bit higher level, you're going to get 2 ASIs probably when other people are only going to get 1.
Yeah. The other option to think about too is that they're equipment heavy and equipment dependent classes, right? Where a wizard or a sorcerer, when you level up, you get better. But a fighter, a lot of his stuff comes from his weapons and his armor. And if you're playing in a party where the DM isn't giving you a lot of that, or you have to go on an entire quest chain and drag your party along just to get a shield upgrade, maybe fighter isn't the best for that story or that class. But yeah.
But that also, it depends upon if the DM is using the fighter as a story arc. Sometimes you can work with the character's background and do these things, and if the party's willing to go along with it, because normally if you're gonna loot a hoard of treasure, there's not just gonna be the sword in it. There'll be spell books and other things in there too. But it could be kind of that impetus of you've got this shield, this walking shield that can take out those goblins we were talking about at the low levels as the wizard's trying to build up. And eventually you find that your fighter, that shield and that sword, and then they can carry you through to that 9th level spell that you need.
So do you use fighters then? From a DM's perspective, would you use the fighter of the party as a story element? Like, would you see that
I try
out?
to mix in when we do any of our adventures. That's why I normally don't try to limit anybody on what they want to play or how they want to play it. Because then I could use elements in different parts. The last story arc we did, well, not the current one that we're doing, but we had like 4 different story arcs going on. But the way we had them intersecting and what was happening to build one character up, and that was also one of the least equipment and weapons heavy games we've had. A lot of them I'll do epic weapons that level up with you and so forth. But in that one, it was really just working off of the characters and their classes. Like Ryan's character had a direct connection with the town, which was one of the hardest connections to have because he was a monk.
Yeah. Anybody on the opposite end of that? Anyone play a fighter or melee oriented character and then found themselves as the centerpiece of a story arc? And how did that make you feel? Give an example or ideas. Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened to me, so I don't think I can weigh in on that. I don't think I've ever played a character that really truly focused on them as part of the story arc. Tim will put a little bit in for everybody when he DMs, and I haven't played with a DM that's more experienced than he is. So,
well, one of the games that I have played, my character wasn't the story arc, but the other characters would, if they would die off or if they got tired of playing a certain character, everybody would continue wanting me to continue playing my fighter. So that way they wouldn't have to all start off at first level again, but we could start off at 5th level or 6th level. Because they knew if something heavy came in, they would catch up on the XP quick because the fighter was there to take out most of the threat. So it wasn't that really the arc was about my character, but it's that my character was able to carry the arc through, the different storylines through.
But as a DM, you've had character arcs sort of lead the story before, and you've sort of split the narrative between our characters. Does that work with fighters specifically, or like?
Well, John got the Tiki Mask, and you all came across the Rolling Tavern where he had to literally take out the elder warrior. And John was the one that, when things got heavy, he was the one who really had to kind of level out, unless, of course, you play a druid and turn into a well while in another creature's mouth. I mean,
it was brilliant.
It was a good move. But still, there's ways to add it in. So, yeah, each character kind of can build onto that arc and that story, depending upon how the DM wants to play it. But especially if you have a newer group starting and you may not have an experienced DM, having that one solid oh my gosh, this is going to be a TPK. Oh, look, we've got the fighter in there. We're all okay.